Last night we watched America and the Holocaust, and Dad had a lot of very interesting things to say about their own really miraculous journey to the United States, and we wanted to capture that on film. So that's what we're doing. So Dad, you want to tell us the story of how your family and how Mom's family got out?
Yes, I think I can start with when Hitler came into power in 1933. My mother recognized the problem right away and wanted to emigrate right then. My father at the time was 45, had a daughter who was let's see, in 33, she would have been 10. My brother would have been 5, and I was 4. Actually, my sister was probably around 12. In 33, I was 4. Harold was 5, and Edith was 11. My father he had been a volunteer in the First World War. He had established himself after the war, and of course had to be financially responsible before he married my mother in 1922. So he had just become established and was reluctant to leave, recognizing that, as everyone else, that Hitler might be a transient affair. But of course we know it wasn't. So our exodus really started in 1937, around Christmas time. My father went to meet with his colleague in Berlin in the Department of International Finance, who asked my father, he said, "Fritz, let's take a walk in the park." So Fritz and my father Fritz and this non-Jewish gentleman took a walk, and the man told my father, says, "If this conversation were overheard, you and I are both dead men."
Wow.
The man told my father, "Get your family out. Things are not getting better and are going to get worse." So Dad Fritz went home to Karlsruhe, and around the New Year's took my mother for a walk and said, "We must get out." And so plans were made. We were fortunate to have my dad must have planned ahead in some way, I don't know when, but he had affidavits guaranteeing that we would not be financial burdens in America, from my maternal grandmother's brother who lived in San Francisco. At the time, Edith, my sister, was in England. She had, my parents sent her to England, I think around 1935, for a high school education. Maybe it was 36. And she established herself very well in London, had many friends, was getting a wonderful education, and every Friday night had a Friday evening dinner at Rabbi Hertz's home, Rabbi Hertz being the chief rabbi of the British Empire and the author of the Pentateuch, which was the standard uh, uh, translation of the five books of Moses and the Haftorahs, which were used really and are still being used, but were replaced a few years ago with a new edition. The short and the long of it is that my sister did not want to go and was very happy. And by some means, my father convinced her that he really wanted his entire family together. Well, because my sister was in England, uh, the visas that had been granted only covered my parents, my maternal grandmother, my brother Harold, and myself. So when Edith decided to join us, uh, Dad Fritz went to Stuttgart and had a meeting with the consul and said, could he not issue a visa for my oldest child? The man, as Fritz told me, looked him in the eye and said, we Americans are not in the habit of separating families. This was very different from the attitude of the State Department after the chief of the Immigration Service long issued edicts to severely restrict and, in a sense, stop Jewish immigration from most of the European countries. So, at any rate, plans were made, and we were able to take out our furniture and our belongings, but no money. And so my mother bought lots of stuff, including a trousseau for my sister, with sheets and pillowcases and whatnot. And I wasn't part of the packing, which took place in the last weeks of July and August. I was with a friend, Peter Goldschmidt's family, for 6 weeks after school had let out. And a servant that we had visited me on August 16th, 1938, and said I should come home. I went home, but the home was empty, and we slept over at the neighbor's house. A neighbor's house on the Heidenplatz, where we lived on number 8 Beethovenstrasse. And the next day, August 17th, we boarded the luxury train, the Rheingold, which ran from Cologne in the north to Basel in Switzerland, and was the crack train. August 17th was the day we left Germany. And in retrospect, I found out that August 17th was a very important date. A official in Germany issued an edict that as of January 1, 1939, all Jews' papers and their passports and their official documents must carry the name of Jacob for the man and Sarah for the woman. Our passports were issued before that date and don't have that name, but I'm sure that Eve's passports and their parents did have, but those were lost, and I have not seen them. The reason I mention that as far as is known, this is the first time in recorded history that a government intruded itself in the naming of children that, insofar as I know, had always been a private matter and up to the family to choose names. Here the Hitler government inserted itself, making sure not only that the passport said Judah, but that the papers had Jacob for a man and Sarah for the woman. Interestingly enough, from the patriarchs, those were not husband and wife. Sarah was Abraham's wife, and of course Rebecca and Leah were Jacob's wife.